1800 hours Pakistan Standard Time. Assalamu alaikum. This is Radio Pakistan. The news read by Daman Zaman. The headlines. The Prime Minister has again emphasized on the need to create awareness amongst the masses to strictly follow the standard operating procedures to contain the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. 148 new deaths and over 4,000 new coronavirus cases have been reported across the country during the last 24 hours. Pakistan has rejected the American State Department's annual country report on terrorism for the year 2019, terming it as self-contradictory and selective. The Foreign Office spokesperson says the responsible policies of the Bharatiya Janata Party-led Indian government are increasingly imperiling the regional peace and stability. In occupied Kashmir, the Indian troops in their fresh acts of state terrorism martyred two more Kashmiri youths in Sopore town today. China has called for a reasonable solution to the Palestine issue. And now the news in detail. Prime Minister Imran Khan has once again emphasized the need to create awareness amongst the masses to strictly follow the standard operating procedures to prevent the spread of COVID-19 pandemic. Speaking in the National Assembly today, he said our health system can cope with the challenge of the pandemic if the people strictly adhere to the preventive measures. Otherwise, the burden on hospitals will increase if the standard operating procedures are not followed in letter and spirit. The Prime Minister said it is an obligation to protect our elderly and sick people and patients with chronic diseases. Imran Khan said the Tiger Force has been deployed to convince the people to observe the standard operating procedures to prevent the contagion. The Prime Minister dispelled the impression that there was any confusion on part of the government in taking measures to cope with the challenge of coronavirus. He said we enforced the lockdown as soon as we detected just 20 cases in Pakistan. However, a complete lockdown for a longer period cannot be enforced owing to the high density population, as we have to protect the people both from coronavirus and hunger. Hence, smart lockdown was implemented. The Prime Minister said the National Command and Operations Centre was established to have a complete details of facilities to cope with the pandemic effectively. Comparing the incumbent government's performance with the previous government's, he said the current account deficit has been reduced to just $3 billion from $20 billion. He said the borrowing from the State Bank of Pakistan stood at 6 trillion rupees when the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf came into power, but it has been brought down to zero. He said our tax collection witnessed a growth of 17% and non-tax revenue 33% before the breakout of the coronavirus. The Prime Minister said foreign direct investment rose to $2.1 billion from $1 billion. During this period, our remittances and exports also registered a growth. More than 4,000 new coronavirus cases have surfaced in the country over the last 24 hours, taking the total tally to 192,970. These include 71,191 in the Punjab, 74,070 in Sindh, 23,887 in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, 9,817 in Balochistan, 11,710 in the Islamabad Capital Territory, 1,365 in Gilgit-Baltistan, and 930 in Azad Kashmir. The death toll from the virus stands at 3,903, with 148 deaths reported over the last 24 hours. 21,835 coroner tests were carried out during this period. 81,307 patients have so far recovered from the infection. The number of coronavirus infection cases across the world has risen to over 9.5 million, and the pandemic has so far claimed over 485,622 lives. The United States tops the list with over 2.4 million cases and more than 124,294 deaths, followed by Brazil with over 1.1 million cases and 53,895 deaths. Over 5.2 million patients have so far recovered from the disease. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations has expressed full support to the communique of the recent OIC contact group virtual emergency meeting on the situation of Indian occupied Kashmir. In a letter to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, ASEAN Coalition pointed out that the situation on the ground in Jammu and Kashmir is dire and needs immediate attention to alleviate the sufferings of the Kashmiri civilians. It stated that since the August 2019 lockdown, there is no breathing space for the Kashmiris as the BJP Indian government has escalated its grip on the disputed territory, moving towards a complete annexation. The coalition said India's preoccupation to annex Kashmir has overshadowed the pandemic crisis, which India has not been able to cope with. This is Radio Pakistan. Pakistan has expressed disappointment over the American State Department's annual country report on terrorism for the year 2019, saying it is self contradictory and selective in its characterization of Pakistan's efforts for countering terrorism and terrorist financing. In a statement, the Foreign Office spokesperson Aisha Faruqi said while the report recognizes that Al Qaeda has been seriously degraded in the region, but it fails to mention Pakistan's crucial role in decimating the Al Qaeda. She said the report acknowledges the sharp decrease in the terrorist attacks in Pakistan but fails to recognize that it was only possible due to Pakistan's resolute and indiscriminate counter-terrorism operations against the banned outfits. The spokesperson said Pakistan is fully aware of its responsibilities as a sovereign state. Aisha Faruqi said we reject any insinuation about any safe havens and said Pakistan itself faces the threat of terrorism from foreign-based and sponsored groups like the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, ISIS-K, and others. The spokesperson said Pakistan remains committed to fulfilling its obligations under the United Nations Security Council 1267 sanctions regime for the freezing of assets and continues to implement the Financial Action Task Force Action Plan and has undertaken wide-ranging and systematic reforms to that end. She said the report fails to acknowledge the full extent of Pakistan's support for the Afghan peace process and positive contributions in facilitation of US Taliban direct talks culminating in the peace agreement of 29th of February 2020. The Foreign Office spokesperson Aisha Faruqi says India's latest action of seeking 50% reduction in the staff strength of the Pakistan High Commission in New Delhi is a part of India's desperate attempts to divert the attention from its state terrorism and worst human rights violations in occupied Kashmir. In a televised opening statement at the weekly news briefing today, she said India would be better advised to focus on its internal and external issues rather than creating diversions at the cost of peace and stability in South Asia. The spokesperson said Pakistan has been consistently sensitizing the world community that irresponsible policies of the BJP government are increasingly imperiling the regional peace and stability. In occupied Kashmir, the Indian troops in the fresh act of state terrorism martyred two Kashmiri youths in Sopore town today. The troops martyred the youths during a cordon and search operation in Hard Shiva area of the town. During another operation, the troops arrested half a dozen youths in different areas of Budgam district. The occupation authorities have snapped the 2G internet service in the area, while high-speed 4G connectivity continues to remain suspended in the entire occupied Kashmir Valley since August 5th last year, when fascist Modi government repealed the special status of the territory and placed it under strict military siege. Meanwhile, Narendra Modi-led fascist government has made another illegal move to further its nefarious plan of altering demographic composition of the territory. The Indian government launched One Nation, One Ration Card scheme in occupied Kashmir. China has urged the United Nations to seek reasonable solution to the Palestine issue. Addressing a United Nations Security Council conference through video link, the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi said until this issue is resolved, peace and stability in the region will remain elusive. He said the two-state solution is the bottom line of international fairness and justice, and history cannot be reversed. And finally, the weather. Mainly hot and dry weather is expected in most parts of the country during the next 12 hours. However, isolated rain thunderstorm is expected in Gilgit-Baltistan, Kashmir, and adjoining hilly areas. And that is the end of this news bulletin. For more news and analyses, log on to our website, radio.gov.pk, and you can also watch live video streaming of our bulletins on the link facebook.com/Radio Pakistan News Official.